Fall is here, which means winter isn't far behind. And if you've lived through a Western New York winter, you know what that brings: snow, ice, and plenty of hectic weather.
Just last year, parts of our region were slammed by a powerful lake-effect storm. Cassadaga was buried under more than 50 inches of snow over Thanksgiving weekend, causing major disruptions across the area.
This is nothing new for us. Just been a little while since we've had something of this magnitude and for this duration of several days.
This year's shaping up a lot like last year with a weak La Niña developing way out in the Pacific. That could play a big role on how our weather shapes up this winter.
Not only that, but snow piling up in Siberia can actually influence the jet stream, and that can impact the kind of winter we see at home.
One thing is for sure, in Western New York, it's never too early to start getting ready for whatever winter throws our way. Well, we're back. Hello, everyone. It's that time of the year where we have our winter weather forecast. And here we go. I feel like we just did this yesterday, but we're off to year two.
Yeah, let's do this.
Of the four of us together. Let's go. All right, what are you guys thinking? Dan, thoughts? What are you thinking?
Ultimately, a lot of similarities.
Okay.
A lot of similarities to last year.
And for ski season, you're hoping that we get totals like last year.
I think we'll get enough. It might be a little below average, but at least enough. But in general, we're seeing the shorter ski seasons, but at least we still got something.
Exactly. All right, so what we're going to do is go into the different drivers that we think will dictate this winter season. And Kevin, you're out of the gate with a discussion of something we deal with a lot lately, La Niña.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Yeah. So, I'm super fun at parties because I like to talk about climate control mechanisms. I don't get invited to a lot of parties anymore, it would seem, because I like to talk about this. There are different sort of control knobs that happen climatologically, which can affect the jet stream, storms, the path of storm systems, the temperature regimes that we have as well. So here we are, Western New York, and again, we have to sort of look at these clues that we get, even on the other side of the globe, for what sort of seasonal temperatures we can expect, and approximate number of storm systems, stuff like that as well. For example, Dan is going to talk about the North Atlantic oscillation, pretty well known among meteorologists and climatologists as well. There are different phases that can occur. There's a positive phase, and he'll get into this, and there's a negative phase as well. That has to deal with the different pressures that you can get over Iceland and over the Azores. But I'm talking about the most famous oscillation. How fans oscillate, go back and forth? Well, there are climate oscillations as well that go back and forth, these different phases that occur naturally as well. El Nino is probably the most famous oscillation, the El Nino Southern Oscillation. If it's in a positive phase, it's nicknamed El Nino. That means now we're not dealing with pressure, we're dealing with the temperature of the surface water at the equatorial Pacific. Why does that matter to you? Well, it does. And La Niña is the negative phase of the ENSO. The waters are a little bit cooler than the mean along the equator, along the Pacific. And this matters to you because the La Niña can impact the path of the jet stream. The polar jet is sort of a steering mechanism of storm systems. It's also a separator of cold air and warm air. And typically if you're north of the polar jet, you're going to be talking about the colder air as opposed to the more southern-based air that we can get. So what does it mean when there's a La Niña? Well, if there's a moderate to strong La Niña, well, this means typically that we are more prone to get maybe slightly milder air. Some intrusions of colder air can come in. Now, Western New York does not get as big of an influence from La Niña as opposed to other areas of the country. You can see we are wetter. What does that mean? Well, it means more precipitation events. It can be an active winter for us. And, we don't like the word active when we're dealing with lake effect precipitation, but that's exactly what it can mean. Again, La Niña has more of an impact on other areas of the country than it does for us. But again, typically what this means for us is more precipitation events, more lake effect events. We're recording this during a lake effect rain. Maybe you remember late October, some lake effect rain across Western New York. We're more prone to that. We're more prone to lake effect mixed precipitation, and yes, lake effect snow events as well. So overall, our winter temps will likely be typical, not brutal, but again, we're going to be busy here at Storm Team 2, okay? And thanks for trusting us. More lake effect precipitation events. Most of our snow will be from lake effect events. And you know, this is typical. This also means, guys, there's going to be a greater variance across Western New York, like we had last year. You know, Lewiston gets spared and Lancaster gets nailed. South Buffalo gets nailed and North Buffalo doesn't get that much. So again, with the La Nina events, and this is not something that's unusual, as Tom Jones would say, it's not unusual.
Right.
But we can expect a great variability between our snow totals from one town to the next and from one county to the next across Western New York.
All right, so that is one part of the Pacific Ocean. We got to look at another part as well, and that is the North Pacific. And we're going to see a broader view of the Pacific Ocean where we look at a heat wave going on. So whereas La Nina is where ocean temperatures are below normal, there is another region of the Pacific Ocean that we got to look at, and that is the North Pacific. Now, the La Nina is that area in blue. This area in orange, yellow is a region of the North Pacific where we're running a fever, all right? Temperatures are well above average, and in some cases in August, record high temperatures for ocean surface temperatures in the North Pacific. You're like, okay, you're looking at the tropics, why here? Well, here, this area of warm water, and again, it's expanding westwards or eastbound, which means its impact on the winter season could be even longer. But when Kevin brought up variance, that's exactly what this is going to do. This high pressure is kind of created by this blob of hot water or warm water, and it's kind of vice versa. They kind of feed on themselves. What that does is it helps redirect the jet stream to the north. High pressure shoves the flow from west to east, more north to south, okay? And then you have a buckling of this jet stream, which brings more opportunities of cold air from Canada down into the Great Lakes and, of course, Western New York. But when you have these buckled jet streams, it means that one pattern rarely locks in for a really long period of time. Okay, what you're going to see are kind of like last year, bouts of cold, and then it kind of, moderates a little bit, ups and downs for sure. But this just gives you more opportunities of cold air. Not constantly, but cold air. And of course, with the lakes right now pretty warm, that sets the stage for some healthy amounts of lake effect snow. Now, this Pacific warm blob is not as studied as much as La Nina and El Nino. It's still kind of a mystery, almost to some degree, of why it's so warm here in the Pacific. But needless to say, it can impact our weather, and I think at times we will see Arctic's cold come our way because of a heat wave in the North Pacific.
Yeah, another place that we like to look at, and we're not talking oceans now, we're talking overland, and that is Eurasian snow cover. We're traveling to Siberia, and we're going to see how snow cover is building this fall and its potential impacts on our weather coming up right after the break.
All right, welcome back to our winter weather outlook. Okay, Dan, what did you say? You're going where? I don't think there's any direct flights from here to there.
There's some guy named Albedo we're going to learn about.
Yes, and we're going to be traveling to Siberia, Eurasia, which is Northern Europe.
Eurasia.
Northern Asia.
Okay.
This is where we have some of the coldest air masses that develop.
These are places where, like in the winter, it's like 75 below zero.
You nailed it.
Right? It's like nutty cold.
And once that snow arrives, it doesn't go anywhere.
Right.
So one of the things we like to look at, and again, really not looking at winter months, but these fall months, we like to look at that snow cover and how it's growing as we're leading into the winter season. Again, it definitely has a big impact. So as we take a look, and the reason why, again, here we are, again, this is kind of Siberia, Northern Asia, Northern Europe. We're taking a look at week 40. Now, when I did my seminar, I was looking at week 44. So we're kind of a little early in the stages here of looking at this snow cover. And again, the reason why, this is where we have the coldest air masses in the Northern Hemisphere. This is where they develop the coldest air. So, of course, if we have that kind of cold air, it will have an impact on those Northern Hemisphere weather patterns. And so at week 40, we average, and again, this is quite a bit, 5.83 million square kilometers. So again, we have that snow. It is growing already. I know we don't have any snow here in Western New York, but in Siberia, it is already growing. And we take a look going back about 70 years of data. And when we take a look at that snow cover and kind of its impacts and kind of the trends, if you will, of what we see during the winter months. And this is pretty much just looking at temperatures for our winter months. When we see below average snow growing throughout the fall months in northern Asia, we typically see it's almost a lock. It is going to be a warm winter. Now, when we do see above average snow growing, this is where there's kind of some caveats. And this is where we have possible extreme cold. And I want to emphasize possible extreme cold because we've had winters where there has been above average snowfall, but we've actually had a warm winter. So that is not a lock. The true correlation is when we have below average snow, it is a true lock. It is going to be a warm winter. So the question is, what is snow cover doing this year? Well, this year, again, we're up to 7.32 million square kilometers. So almost 2 million square kilometers above average. So that snowpack, it is wider. And the reason we look at this and the reason why that snow cover does have an impact, because when we have more snow cover, and we kind of heard you mention it, Patrick and Kevin, a little bit earlier, albedo. What albedo is, that is the measure of energy or sunlight that is reflected back into outer space. And that is key because, of course, more sunlight, more energy that is reflected in outer space, that means colder temperatures. So when we have more snow cover, that traditionally means more energy, more sunlight getting reflected back into outer space. And as a result, that's when we can get better chances for those truly extreme cold air masses. Now, we do have that above average snow, so we're likely going to see these extreme cold air masses develop. The question is, will that extreme cold try to make its way towards us? Well, that's where other teleconnections kind of come into play, one of which, and you heard Kevin mention it, is the North Atlantic oscillation. And again, we have two semi-areas of pressure. We have the Icelandic low, we have the Azores high. And really the difference in these pressures from where they are typically, it's average, that will either give us a positive or negative NAO. So as we take a look at this, when we have a positive NAO, that's when these areas of pressure are running weaker than average. And as a result, we have a stronger than average low and a more zonal flow, a stronger jet stream. And that locks a lot of that bitter cold air. It can't make its way across the pole. It locks it to the north. So again, that's a positive NAO. For us, we usually see warmer than average temperatures. There are some caveats to that, but again, traditionally warmer than average temperatures. Now, when the NAO goes negative, that's when these areas of pressure are weaker than average. Now we don't have that ripping jet stream, that highway, if you will, traveling across the Atlantic. This creates more of a blocking pattern that allows that cold air to travel across the North Pole and here into the eastern 2/3 of the country. So, what are we expecting out of the NAO for this winter? Well, for this year, at least to start, and we're already starting to see some signs of it, we do expect some negative shots here early throughout the winter, but it likely will trend neutral to positive late. So again, early in the season, we do expect some pretty good shots of cold air. I don't know if we're going to see extended periods of cold weather, but at least some pretty good shots of cold air, especially November, December. Now, as we get further into the winter months, this is where I expect more of a positive or neutral NAO, and as a result, I think that's when a lot of that bitter cold, still expected probably average to maybe slightly above average temperatures, but I think a lot of that extreme cold at that point will likely get locked up into portions of Canada. So yeah, that Eurasian snow cover, guys, it is expanding and it is above average at this point. So ultimately, we're going to have to see how that NAO is going to contribute to potentially those rigid shots of cold air.
And it's so interesting that all we need, as we know, we need the wind flow to be just right over the lake. We need that warmer lake water, which we do have, and then those cold shots of air. So it looks like, similar to last year, it's the first part of the season. We're probably going to have the best chance of that. So that kind of takes me into my segment now. I'll take that from you, Dan. And you know I love to look at data. Research.
Yes, we do.
Yes. Yes, we love to look at the data and to continue to see historically, and also changes and the trends and putting it all together. And it's great to just have each one of us taking a chunk out of that and putting it all together for this winter outlook for this coming winter season. So yeah, you've heard of it. We have that weak La Nina setting up. And when we look back, we've had a lot of La Nina years, but we looked at some of the data that looks the most similar setup of the weak La Nina, similar to this year. And we really 2 years stick out. It's 1971 to 72 winter and 2024 to 2025. That was last year. So we saw for 1971, for that weak La Nina winter year, and the building strength and setup similar to this year, and also similar lake water temperatures at this point in the season as we head into the cold season. In 1971, we did end up having a colder than average winter with above average snowfall of 100.9 inches, and typically on average it's about 95 inches. So we were above that. And then last year in 2024-25 winter, we were a little milder than average of the temperatures, but we were below average by a bit with the snowfall. So just wanted to point that out, as sometimes it could go either way. And that's why it's so important to look at a lot of different things, a lot of different weather patterns, even globally, and all the teleconnections. So in terms of Lake Erie water temperatures, so we are continuing in 1971 as well. Last year, the warm Lake Erie water temperatures near to even record-breaking, right around 70, and that lasted similar to this year, October, near to right around record Lake Erie water temperatures, right on for the first part even of October, leading into the cold season. So it is stacking up to look like this winter is going to be most likely very similar to last winter, including sometimes getting those cold surges, providing decent lake effect snow events, but also warm surges with that melting in between. And most of the snow, as we're actually seeing more frequently in recent years, most of our snow coming from lake effect snow. And it's for the first part of the season when we get those colder shots of air over that warmer lake water. So it is setting up for that. Also, what we're noticing too, we're not getting as much of our snowfall for winter with the widespread synoptic systems. So that's why lake effect, we are honing in on that and looking more closely. Okay, so I did some research, was looking at, and I want to do way more. I want to look so much more closely at some of these numbers and looking at the last 30 years in particular for winter snow over time. So there was a little bit of fluctuation for many of the winter months, but one that stood out pretty quickly, just glimpsing into this, March snow over time at the Buffalo Airport decreasing. And in general, snow, winter snow over time, slight decrease here. And that makes sense if we're seeing not as much with the synoptic widespread snow and more from the lake effect snow. And for that March data, just look at last year, top 9 least snowiest March on record in 145 years, and also nearly top 10 warmest March on record. So that melting in between two, some of the snow melting before it hits the ground. So there's a lot coming together to show those trends. And a lot of us are experiencing it too. So the data is backing up even our empirical data of just experiencing it. All right, I want to show you, so last season, Buffalo Airport, we did reach 77.6 inches below that average by about 20 inches. And last year, guys, predicted pretty close to this, and the year before. So this year is looking a little bit similar, and we are going to have those snow totals for you coming up. We did a contour map to really break it all down for you, and also talking about the ski season for Colden and Ellicottville ski areas. That's all coming up.
All right, welcome back, everyone. So when we make a winter forecast, sometimes the cold versus warm part's a little easier than the actual snow, because not only do we get a variability year to year, but in our region,
mile to mile.
We've got Wilson at like Wilson 60 inches on average or less. And then Perrysburg, sometimes 200.
Well, even Cheektowaga, it was a storm a few years ago where, you know, North Cheektowaga had way more snow, or actually South Cheektowaga had more snow than North Cheektowaga. It was amazing.
So when we put up a number of like last year was 77, that's for Buffalo. You know, I know Orchard Park had like 100, double that.
Yeah, we got to consider lake effect, the widespread snow. So we really wanted to make it more clear with this snow total contour map.
So what about this year?
Yep. This is what we're all waiting for, right?
It looks. Okay, so Jen, why don't you kind of walk us through this?
Yeah, so this is something we kind of all created, and then Dan had the great idea of, I think with the lake effect, we really have to put it in perspective.
Yeah, but you can kind of see the story here.
Yeah, the north towns versus south towns, and then the deeper south towns, and then obviously the higher terrain like the ridge, Chautauqua Ridge into Cassadaga and Perrysburg always usually see the most snow, especially when we get the decent lake effect snow setting up. But notice how this season, most of our snow is going to come from lake effects. So we thought it was important to really have this contour map to emphasize that.
And it looks like it's an average kind of dispersion of snow.
Very much so, but ultimately, some of the numbers, especially Buffalo northward, those are actually below average numbers.
They are.
But you get into ski country, that's where we're at to above average. So much like last year, it's kind of a winter of haves and have-nots when it comes to snow.
Yeah, the Buffalo airport had 77 inches of snow, and I'm in the south towns. There were like 2 feet of snow on the ground the entire season, it seemed like, after January.
And we had some big events even in November, December last year.
Thanksgiving. And remember, last year, it was our latest first snowflake.
Right.
It was on Thanksgiving, and that was the beginning of basically the Cassadaga Lake Effect snow event that we got like five feet of snow in just a matter of days. So it really, you can see but most of those, like the ski country, last year got a lot of that snow, but this year we're going to see that there, but maybe a little bit north as well.
If it was the opposite, if it was not a lot of lake effect, if it was a lot of synoptic scale events or a lot of coastal systems moving in, it would be a more homogenized snow totals, right?
Not as much variability there.
Right.
But generally, this looks okay. As I'm looking at it, we're going, very close to average, and depending upon where you are, a few inches either side of below or above. But it certainly looks like ski country is going to do pretty well.
And Dan, you wanted me to add that little sliver along near Lake Ontario because you have a lot of experience.
Growing up there on Lake Ontario, you do get that little band that will occasionally brush there, northern Orleans County, so that's where we could also see some extra lake effect snow.
Can I ask how this compares to last winter? Very similar, isn't it?
Similar, maybe a little above.
Okay.
Yeah, similar, a little above.
And Kevin, this is interesting. Where is your demarcation between, let's say, North Towns and South Towns, or where do the South Towns begin? Because people are going to look at that map and go, okay,
all right.
If we're Archer Park,
I say Route 20A, I say the stadium. Like West Seneca is south of Buffalo, but it's still in the northern half of Erie County, technically again. So I would say to Route 20A, Big Tree Road, extending out into Wyoming County would be sort of like the center point, at least what I consider northern versus southern Erie County. But again, I think that Dan in his Angola home and Patrick in his Hamburg estate are going to get twice as much snow as I will at my Lancaster
And
home.
how about the ski areas? Let's talk about that because we like to go skiing every season, and especially for lessons and the kids' lessons, we're always trying to time it. And it does seem like we are continuing over time, shortening ski seasons. They start a little later, they end a little sooner. And Ellicottville ski areas and into Colden ski areas, we are looking like a healthy amount of snow, probably a little below average, but at least we'll get several good weekends of skiing.
All right, team.
And I remember, the ski season kind of it wrapped up in March pretty quickly last year. It's again the whole shorter aspect is apparent.
And a lot of our lessons that we start in January now start like the first couple are with rain sometimes.
Right.
So we're really we're hoping for at least some good skiing.
This is from last year. Of course, we had the big Cassadaga event, and then we had just a couple of big events in January and February in the South Towns. But here's a preview. What's that guy doing?
Ready,
get out of the way.
Hey.
We're Lake Effect country. We're still going to at least get some snow.
So we'll regroup here in a year and see how we did compared to our forecast. But here's
so far, so good.
here's to a good winter forecast and a good winter season. Thanks for joining us.